Hi, everybody. Welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal Zone TV. I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And for those who may be new to the show, if you would please subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate it. Don't forget to share the show on your Facebook and with all your friends. And also, please don't forget to give the show a like. Now, tonight I have two awesome guests. They have been on the show several times, and I welcome them back. Tonight we have David Weatherly and Ross Allison. They are both authors and paranormal investigators, and they also have a book that has just been published, Haunted Toys, which is an awesome book. Now, let's welcome David and Ross to the show. Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, no, thanks for having us.
Before we start the show, for those who may not know you, just in case, David Weatherly, would you please start and tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Sure, a quick recap. Been in the field for 40 years now. I hesitate to say that sometimes. It shows my gray hairs, but yeah, I investigate all aspects of the paranormal, from hauntings to cryptids and UFOs and ancient mysteries. Travel extensively, and this is what I do full time. I've written a number of books, the latest with my good friend and co-author here, Ross Allison, on haunted toys.
And I'm Ross Allison, and I don't have any gray hair that I have. I've been doing this for close to 30 years, so I'm catching up to them. I started the oldest ghost hunting group in the Pacific Northwest, known as a GHOST, which stands for the Advanced Ghost Hunters of Seattle-Tacoma. I've written a number of books myself, and have recently partnered up with David, and we're having a lot of fun doing a lot of books. So.
Yes, and tonight is kind of like you are going to write a book on this, right? I see.
We got lots of books.
Well, now, but this one, Ross sent me the book cover that he created, Haunted Ships and Lighthouses, with both of your names on the book. So this is kind of like bringing it out into the open tonight, right?
Yeah, this is a preview.
Yeah.
All right, so
we have you to blame because you really wanted to do this show on haunted ships and lighthouses, and I told David, I said, we got all this material. Why don't we just put it in a book? And we figured, yeah, this would actually be a really quick one for us to put together because we've already written about a lot of these places.
That's right.
yeah, I've always wanted to do a show on haunted ships, always. And when Ross told me about it, I said, oh my God, yeah. And then he said that what David Weatherly wanted to join us. That's friggin' awesome. I didn't know the two of you were going to write that book together. I thought it was just Ross. Okay, so my favorite subject, let's start tonight. You know what? Okay, so I've never heard of this one. The SS Baychimo? Is that how you pronounce it?
Baychimo.
Oh my God. I read a little bit about this. Could we start with this one? Whoever wants to do it, David or Ross, I would love to start with this one.
Well, definitely, I'll take this one. And this one actually is a good story to start with because this really clears up the confusion when people talk about ghost ships. And there is a difference between a ghost ship and a haunted ship. All right. Now, the SS Baychimo actually is a ghost ship. And what a ghost ship is it's a situation where either the crew has died on the ship or they've abandoned the ship. And this leaves the ship out on the water on its own. And it just drifts along the currents. And this happens quite a bit. But this actually became a very well-known story. Now, the ship was actually built in 1914. And it ended up being abandoned in 1931, I believe. And what happened is that the ship was actually was up in Alaska during the winter seasons. And it got trapped in the ice. And so one of the things that they really have to do is try to keep these ships from being trapped in the ice, because with the pressure of the ice on the ship, it can actually cause the ship to implode. it's too much pressure. So they have to keep these boats going. Well, unfortunately, the crew was not able to free the ship from the ice. And so they made a decision to abandon the ship. And they walked along the ice and decided to start up camp. Well, unfortunately, that night, a really bad blizzard came through. And so the next morning, when they went to go check on the ship, they were surprised to find that it was gone. Now, they assumed that the ship had probably broke down and sunk due to the storm. Well, it wasn't until like a few days later that reports started coming in that they saw the ship adrift. And so immediately, they went seeking out the ship to try to reboard it. But what was really interesting about this story is it seemed like they were never able to capture or catch the ship. It was always too far out there. So they never were able to board the ship. And so it continued to float in the currents. And it did this for 38 years. Now, this is pretty amazing because usually ships don't last on their own for that long. They'll usually sink after a while or end up on shore somewhere. Well, during its 38 years, and this is just due to the fact that the last time it's ever been reported seen was in 1968. Now, during this time, people have come across the ship. In fact, there was one story where a schooner actually boarded the ship. And they were investigating, checking out what was still on the ship. And to their surprise, that night, while they were on the ship, a storm hit, leaving them trapped on that ship for 10 days without food. Yeah, so finally they were able to escape the ship. And it just, again, it was one of those stories where they believed the ship has taken on a spirit of its own. And it's constantly avoided any capture, especially when a captain came across the ship and he wanted to capture the ship and he wanted to have it scrapped. And again, it escaped from that situation as well, until it just finally just disappeared, and no one knows where it is to this day, if it's still out there floating around or if it's actually sank to the bottom.
They were able to rescue some of the crew members, but didn't some of them, like 14 of them, decided to stay behind? They refused to abandon the ship?
The full crew, I think the crew of like 37 men, when they evacuated the ship, 14 stayed behind on land that hopefully they could actually return and get the ship going again. So they did stay behind, but they didn't stay on the ship. They just stayed close to the ship that hopefully they could get back. And unfortunately, again, the ship escaped from them. So no one actually died on the ship.
Have there been any recent sightings at all on this ship?
Not in the research that I've come across so far. Like I said, the last sighting, I believe, was in 68 or 69, around that time.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's still pretty amazing that a ship on its own would last 38 years.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So no recent sightings that you know of. Why do you think that would happen? Why do you think that it would appear and people were able to board it, and then all of a sudden you don't see it anymore? There's no more sightings of it. Why do you think that happens?
And that's one of the biggest mysteries about this ship. When they've actually, I think it was in 2004, they actually put a team together to search for this ship.
Uh-huh.
Whether it sank or not, they really put a lot of work into trying to find it, and they just can't. It's always, like I said, it's always just out of reach. When you do see it, you can never get to it.
That's weird.
You know what's really fascinating about this story, Norene, is that it sort of is a real-life Flying Dutchman. The Flying Dutchman, a lot of people know the name because there's an opera and it's been used in a lot of other things, but a lot of people don't know the story. Now, the Flying Dutchman is considered sort of nautical folklore, and it goes back to the 17th century. It's a story about a ship that can never make port. So it's basically a cursed ship, and it's known as being this ghostly, full-masted ship that appears on the horizon. And when people see it, it's considered a portent of doom. So, sailors are very superstitious about seeing the Flying Dutchman because they believe that it's going to cause them to wreck or cause their deaths even. And the reports about the Dutchman go all the way up into modern times. There was just several years ago someone who claimed to have seen the Flying Dutchman. And, no one really knows where the original story came from. Seems to be kind of shrouded in mystery, so to speak. Some people believe it's purely fictional, and that it was just fabricated somewhere along the way. But the accounts and the people that talk about it go back pretty far, and modern accounts are just as intriguing because people say that they see this ship, and it's an old 17th century ship, but they say that if you see it at night, it glows.
Yeah, it glows green.
That you can see the crew members on board, and that they'll call out for help, but you can never get to the ship. It's always in the distance, just like Ross was talking about. And if you try to reach it, it just keeps fading away into the distance. So the story is that the ship itself and the crew that are on board are sort of stuck in this timeless journey, and they can never make port.
Oh my gosh! How did the Flying Dutchman, was that the original name of the ship? How did they get it? How did it get its name?
The Flying Dutchman itself.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the first account of the Flying Dutchman, what it originally came from. We've come to know it from fictional accounts about a ship called the Flying Dutchman. But whether that was based on an earlier ghost ship, we don't really know. As I said, the story seems to have surfaced sometime around the 17th century, and it's just been consistent since then. And one of the things that's fascinating about it is that it has influenced a lot of entertainment media. So the opera called The Flying Dutchman has long been a standard. Of course, the Pirates of the Caribbean, the whole Flying Dutchman thing, and utilized it in the series. That's right. It's a fascinating story, and it's something that I've talked to a lot of old sailors, and I had sailors in my family years ago, and anyone who has any kind of nautical connection, and they know the story of the Flying Dutchman, and it's very much a standard in nautical folklore and superstition.
Now, it's not one of those where if you see the Flying Dutchman, it's a sign of doom, is it?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
No way.
If you're out sailing and you see the Flying Dutchman, it's a bad omen.
Oh, no. And now, has any of those superstitions come true? Does anybody know? Is there any record of it?
Well, there's a lot of stories out there on the internet, if you look it up, where people claim to have seen the Dutchman. And of course, they're especially fishing boats, and they claim that once they've seen the Dutchman, that they don't catch any fish. They bring in a horrible haul that day, or they've even their ship wrecked.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Or storms will come in.
Storms.
Yeah, storms was a big one.
Wow. That's crazy. And all these that we have so far discussed will be in your book as well, in probably more detail?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, so since we're doing lighthouses and ships, let's switch to a haunted lighthouse. And let's do St. Simon's, and I think David Weatherly is going to do that one. So let me find the image for that, David. St. Simon's. Okay, go ahead, David.
Yeah, that's a fairly short story. It's kind of interesting. St. Simon's Lighthouse is in St. Simon's, Georgia, and it's a lighthouse that was built in 1872. The primary ghost story that surrounds St. Simon's is that two of the earliest lighthouse keepers, a man named Osborne and his assistant John Steffens, were property, there's the lighthouse, and then there's quarters for the lighthouse keeper and his family and his assistant. So the story is that somewhere along the way, Osborne made a comment towards Stefan's wife, and it was not it was not a very considerate comment. Apparently, it's kind of, you read the stories and it's kind of vague. It may have been something sort of sexual, but it was something that John took great offense at, and he essentially couldn't let it go. So he ended up shooting Osborne and killing him. Now, Stephens was brought to trial, and he was actually acquitted because of the evidence that he presented, detailing what his boss had said to his wife. So this guy essentially got away with murder. And the result is that Osborne's ghost seems to have taken offense at that and continued to haunt the premises of the lighthouse. And one of the things I find interesting about the story, too, is that there's a very early account, 1908, there was a newspaper account about a sighting of his ghost at the lighthouse. So this is a story with a lot of history and accounts to back it up, and it's pretty fascinating.
Mm. Oh, what's the date of this lighthouse?
It was built in 1872.
Wow.
So the incident, the murder took place sometime in the 1880s when Osborne and Stephens were the keepers at the lighthouse. And, it wasn't too long after that, as I said, 1908, there was a newspaper account published detailing a sighting of a ghost on the property of the lighthouse. Mm-hmm. So, really this lighthouse became haunted pretty quickly after it was built.
Have you been there before?
I have not been to this one, no.
Mm-hmm. Ross, have you been there?
I haven't.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Well, a good portion of the rest of the stuff in the book we've investigated before, but there's so many fascinating lighthouses around the country and even abroad that we haven't hit all of them on the list yet.
Right, and some of them, might be impossible to get to as well.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's do Big Bay Point Lighthouse, and I think Ross will be doing that one. So let me find the info. Okay, go ahead, Ross. Go ahead.
That's his story.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, he got Big Bay. He wanted that one.
Well, which one did you want to do?
Well, I've got.
Sequin?
We can do. Why don't we do Sequin Island Lighthouse?
All right, let me find that.
In Maine.
Here you go.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, this is actually Maine's tallest and second oldest lighthouse. In fact, it was commissioned by George Washington in 1795. Now, it's gone through plenty of rebuilds since then. In fact, I believe the first structure was a wooden structure, but now it is a brick structure to this day. But it's got a lot of interesting stories here. Now, back in the 1850s, a keeper had recently just married, and he brings his new bride to join him in his keeper duties at this lighthouse. Now, this lighthouse is on an island that's 3 miles out from the main shore. Now, to keep her entertained, especially during the winter season, he buys her a piano. Now, unfortunately, story has it that this piano only came with one sheet of music. So she was bound and determined to learn this song. And so she played it over and over and over and over again. And we all know how we get when we keep hearing the same song over and over again. Well, it drove the keeper mad, to the point where he actually took an axe to the piano, but then also to his wife. Later, after realizing what he did, he actually killed himself. Now, many claim that he still roams the grounds, probably in guilt after what he had done. But they also say on quiet nights, you can actually hear that song being played on the piano over and over again.
I love it.
Now, interesting enough, that's not all that's haunted. There's claims that there's a little girl that apparently died on the island. She was a daughter of a future innkeeper, and he actually, well, I should say, she actually had gotten sick. This again was during the winter season, and she died of a fever. And the story is that they weren't able to transport her body, so they buried her on the grounds. And they believe that her spirit still wanders this island. Many people on boats passing by the island have seen a little girl waving to them, and when you turn back, she's gone. If you happen to visit the island or the lighthouse, many say that you might see her, dancing around on the grounds. You can hear her giggling or even talking. But what's really interesting is they also say that you might even hear her coughing late at night, still suffering from that illness that took her life. Now, my favorite story to this lighthouse actually takes us into more modern times. It was back in 1985 when they had decommissioned the lighthouse. Now, lighthouses are automatic. And so what happened is the Coast Guard was in charge of, making sure that the lighthouse was ready to go. And so they sent this warrant officer to go out and, make sure everything was ready, and also to get rid of all the stuff that wasn't needed there anymore. Since no one's living on the island, on this, in this lighthouse, let's go ahead and remove everything and strip it down to its bare bones. So this officer, he's there, and he decides that, he's going to spend a couple days, packing things up. And so late into the night, he's awoken by the bed shaking. And he looks over and he sees this lighthouse keeper and what was described as oilskins. And he was just shaking his head back and forth. And he said to this officer, he said, "Don't take the furniture. Please, leave my home alone." Well, the next day, the officer, pondered on whether this was really an experience that he had or whether he dreamed it. But he continued to do what he was sent out there to do. And so he packs up all the furniture and he puts it on a boat. And the boat was getting lowered down into the water. And all of a sudden, the cables broke. And the boat went crashing down into the water and sank. And no one can explain why this boat did this, why the cables broke. But we think that it may have well been the ghost that didn't want his personal belongings to be taken away.
I believe this was featured on a ghost show before, because I remember when they were telling the story about how she played that same song over and over and over, and I remember that part. Wow, that's really interesting. Any recent sightings at this lighthouse?
There's been a few ghost hunting groups that have gone out there and have had some pretty interesting experiences. They've actually have recorded audio clips of hearing that piano music late at night. They've also had experiences with their EMF detectors going off when they can't explain why. In fact, one episode that I watched of some ghost hunting group that went out there, they even had a report of being touched. So it's definitely a very active place. Now, I personally, unfortunately, have not been out there. And it is going to be on my list. And David, you're joining me, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Then let's go to another haunted ship, another ghost ship. And
I
let's...
just wanted Big Bay.
Oh, you want... Well, wait a minute. No, I don't want to do... No, David Weatherly. Now we have to switch off. Okay, so, David, we'll do your... How about the USS Lexington? I know you wanted to do that one.
Yeah, the Lexington... Lexington is known as the Blue Ghost. And it was an aircraft carrier during World War II. Stationed... it's now in Texas. and it's one of those locations where you can go on and do a ghost hunt and so forth. And a lot of different groups have gone onto the Lexington. The number of accounts on there are they're pretty interesting. There's something someone just sent me recently. I wasn't able to open the file, but purportedly someone just caught a video of an apparition on board the Lexington. So or else I'll shoot that to you as soon as I get a file that'll open. I'm really curious to see that. The most interesting story connected to the Lexington is that there are numerous accounts from people who have gone to visit the ship, and you can do a tour to get to see what an aircraft carrier during World War II was like. And you hear all these interesting tidbits about its history. A few of the fascinating things are that the Lexington during World War II was never painted, and a lot of ships during that time were painted in all these camouflage colors. But it was, I believe, Tokyo Rose who actually threw the Blue Ghost onto the Lexington because they said the ship just kept coming back and appeared at inopportune times for the Axis, essentially. So in modern times, the ship is available to see and to take tours on, and all these people report going to the Lexington and taking the history tour and having this phenomenal guide who's dressed in a period uniform and who calls himself Charlie. Except that this guy doesn't exist. There are numerous accounts of people reporting and actually complimenting the excellence of the tour guide. And of course the staff, they're a little bit used to it now, but in the past they would say, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have anybody in that period attire. We don't have anybody named Charlie on board the staff. And witnesses who have experienced this guy say that he knows so much about the ship as if he had actually served there. He knows all the little nooks and crannies and little secrets and details. So it's pretty fascinating. I've been on board the Lexington and I have not seen Charlie, but I've talked to a number of people who had this experience. And one lady, it was really fascinating. She did the tour. She was telling me the whole story doing the tour, and her daughter was with her. And the two of them did this full history tour with this guy, and towards the end of it, they wanted to say something or ask a question or something of Charlie, and as the group was leaving, they turned to ask him a question, and he was just gone. And where they were standing, there wasn't any other doorway or anything for him to exit. So it's pretty cool, as far as ghost stories go. We get something that's a little bit more friendly, I guess you would say. But a lot of the accounts in the Lexington, a lot of people experience various hits on their equipment, EMF meters and so forth, and EVP recorders, and things like that. So, a few people have reported cold breezes and being touched and things like that. It appears that Charlie loved the ship so much that he decided to stick around as a tour guide, and he still shows up on occasion.
That's amazing.
That story scares me. I'm realizing in my afterlife, I'm probably going to continue to be a tour guide for Spooked in Seattle.
I also.
But that would be the most awesome ghost tour run by a real ghost, right?
Especially if you carry Mr. Creepy around.
There you go.
Hey, I also read about that there'll be a crew working on restoration, and they'll take a break and they'll walk away, and when they come back, the work has already been done. Did you hear that?
Yeah, that's some of the accounts too. Things like tools. I talked to someone who worked on the Lexington years ago, and they said that if he ever left a tool laying around and walked away, when he came back, he would find that someone had put the tool away.
Oh, yes.
So the spirits on board the Lexington like things to be in order.
Yeah.
Or if you get ghosts to clean your house, that would be nice.
Oh, now, yeah. Believe me, I'd like to have that myself. All right, so let's go to, I like this one. Is it called the Heceta Head Lighthouse?
Yep.
All right, hold on. Let me find the picture for it before we start. Where are you? Okay, so Ross, are you going to take this one?
I will take this one.
All right, take this one.
Now, this lighthouse is actually in Oregon, and I've actually had the pleasure of visiting this place. I have not done an investigation, but I did get to visit it. Now, this was built in 1892, and it now operates as a bed and breakfast, so you can actually stay there if you like. Now, the story is that this place is haunted by a woman. She's referred to as the Gray Lady, or they've actually given her the name Rue. I'm not sure where they got that name, but this is what the locals call her now. And she's described to have this long silver hair, and she's wearing a long dark dress. Now, according to legends, she is either the wife of a previous keeper, or she's the mother of a daughter that had fallen to her death from the cliffs near the lighthouse. Now, she has been reported since the 1950s, and most of the locals claim to have had experiences with her. Many will say that you might hear her, phantom footsteps following you around the grounds. Doors will open and close by themselves. But there's also been face-to-face encounters with her as well. Now, one of the most dominant places where she has been seen is in the attic. Now, there's a great story that pertains to the attic, and this was back when they were doing some work on the building, and one of the workers was in the attic, and he claims to have had an actual experience with her. He saw her face to face, and it freaked him out. He went running out of the attic and refused to go back into the attic. So to keep him working, they decided to have him work on the exterior of the building. So he's in the scaffolding, and he's working on the building, and he accidentally broke the attic window. Now, of course, breaking it from the outside means that the glass is going to go on the inside into the attic. Now, again, he refuses to go back into that attic, so he's not going to clean it up. But he does fix the window from the outside. Well, the next day, to his surprise, when he came back and got to the scaffolding and got to that level that was right next to the attic, he found the broken glass pieces that should still be on the attic floor, now stacked nicely on the scaffolding. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, there's another interesting story here. Now, it seems that whenever there's anybody that, as she feels, is intruding her space, she definitely makes herself known. Now, there was a group of volunteers painting the inside, and of course, they decided they were going to spend the night and continue to do the painting the next morning. Well, throughout the night, the fire alarm kept going off. And of course, it'd wake them up. They go downstairs, turn off the fire alarm because there's no fire, but of course, you always want to double check. And of course, they turn it off and they go back to sleep. And of course, a few minutes later, fire alarm goes off again. And it happens about 2 or 3 times, so finally, they decide, let's just pull the batteries out. And so they pull the batteries out, they go back up into their room, crawl back into bed, and they go to sleep, and of course they're woken again by the fire alarm. The fire alarm that has no batteries in it.
Oh.
And this continued on throughout the night. By the next morning, they pretty much had had enough, and they were excited to get out of that building.
I guess so. All right, so David, do you want to do your Big Bay?
No, I don't want to do it now.
No.
Big Bay Lighthouse. Big Bay Lighthouse is in Michigan, and it's on Lake Superior. Now, the Great Lakes themselves are a very mysterious area. There's so many legends and everything surrounding the lakes, and even the lakes themselves are said to be haunted. But Big Bay Lighthouse is pretty interesting. It was built in 1896. It was completed in 1896. It actually took something like 14 years to build the lighthouse itself. And it operated for a time. At one point, the lighthouse was taken over by the Army, has a base in the 1950s, and there's a whole story surrounding that about how someone who was stationed at Big Bay actually went off and got in a bar fight in nearby a Big Bay in a tavern and killed someone, and that in itself led to a famous novel called Anatomy of a Murder that was later turned into a successful film. But the lighthouse itself has a really strange story that surrounds it too. There was a man named William Pryor who was sent to the lighthouse as the lighthouse keeper, and he was an older man. He'd had a lot of issues working at other lighthouses because he always seemed to get into arguments with his younger assistants, and as a result, he was sort of shuffled off to Big Bay as a nice quiet place for him to do his job and maybe not get into conflict. And when he went there, he decided that he would assign his own son, George, as his assistant. So he sort of guaranteed himself that there wouldn't be any trouble. But William Pryor seems to be a troubled man all the way around. And what happened was tragedy soon found him. In 1902, his son took a fall at the lighthouse. And the fall didn't kill him, but it did break his leg. And 1902, the medicine wasn't as adept as it is these days, so he fell and hurt his leg, and it may have been broken or it may have just been twisted, I can't remember which, but one of the two, he got an infection due to the fall and what happened with his broken leg. So the infection pretty much took hold, and it did him in. A couple of weeks later, George died. And William was really devastated at the loss of his son. So the story is that he took a handgun and went off into the forest surrounding the lighthouse. Now, people presumed that he had gone off to commit suicide, and nothing was heard from him. They sent search parties out. They searched the whole area. They did everything they could, but they never found him or found his body. His wife and his other children decided that they were leaving the lighthouse because of all the things that had happened. And they moved to a different city and left. Another lighthouse keeper came in. And this lighthouse keeper began to keep his diary of all the things going on. It was over a year later, 17 months in total later, after this keeper had been there, that a gentleman showed up at the lighthouse late one night, and he told the lighthouse keeper that he'd been out hunting and that he stumbled across a skeleton hanging from a tree about 1.5 miles from the lighthouse.
Oh my God.
So the new lighthouse keeper went with the hunter, went to the spot, and they found the body, and it was wearing the clothing of William Pryor. So they reported this to the authorities, who came out and looked things over. They found that the skeleton had a handgun, that it was on a belt. So it appeared that William Pryor had gone off into the forest and, instead of shooting himself, had decided to hang himself and commit suicide that way. Now, after the skeleton was discovered, strange things began to happen in the lighthouse. And the new keeper reported that there would be strange banging noises that would wake him up in the middle of the night, that various sounds would be heard around inside the building. And the strangest thing, which still seems to be the case today, is that the spirit that is hanging out in this lighthouse that everyone assumes to be William Pryor has a great fondness for playing with water faucets. So there are constant reports, even today, of the taps being turned on and left to run, and people assume that it's the spirit of William Pryor. Now, this lighthouse also is a bed and breakfast, and you can actually go there and stay and experience this spirit manifestation for yourself.
Wow. Hold on for a second. Okay. I gotta fix the audio on this.
Did we lose her?
Oh, no, I'm here. Can you guys hear me? I'm just fixing the audio on this one. Hold on for a second. Okay, so, let's see, what's next? All right, this is the lighthouse. So, who wants to do the USS Hornet? Because I have some stories to tell you.
Ooh,
And you know what? I'm really, really sorry because I had some EVPs, and there was one in particular I wanted to share with you, and I didn't have time. Oh my God! But I can tell you about it once we get into the story of the. Have any of you ever been to the USS Hornet?
Yeah, I've investigated that place at least 3 or 4 times.
Oh, you have? Okay. It's a half hour from my house, and. My husband is a retired San Francisco police detective. He's been retired for 11 years, and he runs the security on the USS Hornet with Leo Mello. They're in charge of security. But I used to have a paranormal team, Paranormal Zone TV, and we used to do live broadcasting, and we used to go to historical locations. And, of course, the USS Hornet was one of them, and we were also the designated paranormal team for the aircraft carrier. So we were on there many, many, many times. And I can tell you, it is in fact haunted. Haunted. But there's I've never found any negativity on the ship. So go ahead, Ross, and then I'll give you, I'd like to tell you some things about it. But go ahead and tell your story on the Hornet.
No problem. Now, the Hornet was actually commissioned in 1943, and it was decommissioned in 1970. Now, it had a major part in World War II, Vietnam War, and also later in the Apollo recovery. So it's got a lot of history there. Now, when it comes to its ghosts, there's been a lot of claims of people seeing men in naval uniform wandering around the ship. In fact, one story that I came across was there was a couple, and they got lost. And they were kind of roaming around, and this is during the tours and stuff that are open to the public. You can now visit the ship because it is a museum now. And so this couple got off the track, and they're not sure where they are. And if you've ever been to the ship, it's an aircraft carrier, so this is huge, one of the biggest ships in the fleet. So it's easy to get lost on these ships if you don't know where you're going. So they're wandering around, and they're trying to find their way back. And just ahead of them, they see a sailor walk out from one room and head down the hall away from them. So they call out to him to get his attention, just so somebody could direct them in the right, where to go. And he ignores them. And he continues on, and he goes into another room. So they decide to follow him into the other room so they can, talk to this guy. And as soon as they get into the other room that he had just walked into, to their surprise, they find that this room is just, stacked with, a bunch of boxes. And there's nobody else in the room. So this happens quite a bit to, especially a lot of, visitors that visit the ship, or even those who work on the ship. They'll claim to be in a room, and in the next room you'll actually hear conversations happening. People, men talking about, the planes and how they're going to, fix the planes, or, life back at home. And of course they go into the room to see who's in the next room, and there's nobody there. And of course the talking completely stops. Same thing. You'll be working on something. You set your tools down. You come back. Your tools are gone. But there's one ghost that a lot of people experience. He's described to be an officer. What really makes him stand out is the tobacco pipe smell. He's always, whenever he's seen as an apparition, he'll be smoking a pipe. And so you'll always know when he's around is when you can actually smell that pipe tobacco. And you'll turn around and he might be standing off in the corner and then vanish right in front of your eyes. So he seems to be one of the most dominant ghosts. Now, again, tons and tons of stories, ghost stories, when it comes to the ship, because, you know, obviously a lot of us have had the opportunity to investigate this place. Now, I know my team has had the opportunity to spend the night on the ship, and I do know that one of our personal experiences that really stood out for me was one night we were in sick bay, and we actually had a digital thermometer with us, and we also had a psychic with us, and she definitely picked up on a man in this room. And so, you know, we're doing everything we can to try to communicate with the spirits, and we could feel the room getting colder. And of course, you know, I pull out the digital thermometer and I'm monitoring, you know, the changes in the room, and I can see it's definitely, you know, temperature starting to drop in the room. Now, this could be, you know, just normal because it's, you know, nighttime and, you know, ships do get a little colder. And so I'm just kind of monitoring this. But then all of a sudden, you know, one of the investigators, you know, asked, you know, what year were you born? And to my surprise, and I apologize, I was going to send you the photo, but I hadn't had a chance to go back and to find it, to locate it, because I think it's been, gosh, a good 8, maybe 9 years since we had last been on the ship, so I had a lot of files to go through. But to get back to my experience, as I said, I'm holding, you know, this digital thermometer, and right when she asked, you know, what year were you born, all of a sudden, the numbers on the digital thermometer went off.
Really?
And then it came back with I think it was 1967 was the numbers that it said on the digital thermometer. And my jaw just dropped. I'm like, whoa, that was weird. And, you know, of course, I took a picture of it just to prove that this happened, you know. And why would the digital thermometer be seeing those 4 numbers? So, you know, we continued on, and of course the number disappeared again, and it came back in with the normal temperature reading. And of course, you know, we started asking, you know, different questions and stuff, and then I started to notice that the numbers started going up and down, and it just started getting really, you know, eradicated numbers all over the place. And so we started asking, you know, questions like, okay, if you're responding, you know, with the digital thermometer, could you, you know, for a yes, could you make the numbers go up? You know, for a no, could you make the numbers go down? And we used that throughout the night, and we were actually getting some pretty interesting responses just by that experience alone. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely something going on there.
So you were in contact with a female on the ship? Because that's pretty rare.
No, this was a male.
Oh, it was a male. Yeah, because there were no women, there were no nurse females on that aircraft carrier.
Right.
They were all men. Okay, so the USS Hornet was the first time I ever saw my first shadow man. And I was walking down the hallway toward, I can't remember if it was sick bay or one. I was looking for my team members, and I was following the cord, you know, to our live stream. And so I was looking for them, and as I'm walking down the hallway, and I can't believe I did it by myself, I was walking down the hallway, there was an opening, you know, to go down to another hallway, and as I'm starting to walk down, I look up, and there's this shadow person, and he's leaning around the hallway, around the doorway. He's all black. Can't see his face because he's all black, but I can see he had like a baseball hat on the top of his head, and of course that was all black as well. And then we looked at each other. I knew he looked at me, even though I couldn't see his face. And then when we caught sight of each other, he disappeared. Now, my husband, as like I said, has been working on that ship for like 10 years now. And I don't know for some reason why, and I don't know if you've heard of the Whistler, but there's have you heard of him on the ship? Okay. I came in contact with him, maybe 5 years ago. And the first time I found out about him was through Heidi, who runs the ghost tours and the educational department, Heidi Shave on the USS Hornet. And we were doing a seance up in the ambassador room, and she said, Norene, have you heard the whistler yet? And I said, no. She goes, okay, I'm going to see if I can contact him and see if he'll come and if we can hear him. And so we were sitting around the table, and she was asking for him. And sure enough, he did his whistle, and it's a very strange whistle. And I said, oh my God, Heidi, there he is. And Heidi said, can you please do that again? And he did. Okay. So then one night I was working on my computer, and I had a show, and all the equipment was in my living room, and it was in the dark. My husband had an event that night on the Hornet. He wasn't going to get home till really late. So I'm sitting there in the dark, but the computer is on, and that's the only light that's in the room. And frig, all of a sudden he was in my I'm telling you the honest to God truth here. Let me go on camera and tell everybody this is the honest to God, swear on a Bible. He came in the living room, he friggin' scared the hell out of me, and he was right behind me, and he did his damn whistle. But I wasn't scared. He just I know I was scared, but I wasn't really scared, but I froze. I didn't say anything to him, and so then when the next day I told my husband about it, and then a couple of nights after that, I still had moved my equipment out because I was still working on another show. I was having a guest come in house. He was there again, and he did his whistle, but I didn't talk to him. He just startled me. Then one night, my husband wasn't coming home again. He was late on the Hornet. They had an event. He's in charge of the events when they have him on the Hornet. And so I was so tired I couldn't wait up any longer. So our bedroom is upstairs. So I went upstairs, and as I'm walking up the steps and I'm turning around the landing up there is this sailor. I guess he was a sailor, but he was in his brown uniform, the brown, I guess they were brown. He had sandy blonde hair. His face was blurred, couldn't see his legs, but he was there, and he was full bodied, but not as if he was a live person standing there. He was a little see-through, but I could see him. And all I said to him, I said, you know what? I'm really damn tired, and I don't want you to bother me. That's all I'm asking is just let me sleep and don't bother me. And he didn't. And I never saw him again. And the whistler has never come back. And I do have an EVP. When we were on the ship, one of my team members recorded him because she had heard him as well, and she did record his whistle, so I do have his whistle, but I forgot to download it because I wanted to share that with you tonight. But so far that's all I can remember about my experiences, but they were pretty wild on the Hornet. Is there anything else you want to say about the Hornet?
Well, I was going to say, interesting enough, over 300 men died on that ship. This is, due to, combat accidents on the ship. What was really interesting as I was researching, I found that 3 men were decapitated. Yes. When the flight cables snapped. Yeah. That's a horrible way to go. Yes. Oh my God. Oh, well, but the most interesting thing is, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the USS Hornet has the honor of having the highest suicide rate in the Navy.
Oh, that's right. They absolutely do.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they do. Let's see.
So there's definitely a lot of reasons why that place could be haunted. Definitely.
Oh, yeah. And as far as crew coming back, too. They've seen them walk there's an area where only the officers would go, and up above, where all those big chains are, up above there, they'll see some of the officers walking up there. Yeah, it's a very interesting ship. All right, so what's next now? We have, let's see, we've done St. Simon's, Big Point Sequence. Oh, St. Augustine. Who wants to do St. Augustine?
Yeah. Do we have time for more?
Oh yeah, we've got 10. We got about 8 more minutes. So let me find St. Augustine. Okay, here you go. Who wants to do that? David?
I can do it, or Ross can. You want to do St. Augustine's and Queen Mary right quick?
Actually, if you want to do Queen Mary, we can play something from the Queen Mary. I have a video.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, let's do that.
All right, hold on. Let me find it. Hold on. We're going to do the Queen Mary. All right, got it. Now, okay, so I do have that video. Where's the video? Okay, that's really strange. Hold on. Okay, yeah, I've got the video. So go ahead. You want to start, and then I can just let me know when you want me to play that video of the Queen Mary.
Let me say a little about it, and then Ross can take over and intro the video. The Queen Mary. He and I have both done the Queen Mary a lot of times. It's probably the most well-known haunted ship in the world. Queen Mary was built in 1930s as a luxury liner, and interestingly enough, during World War II, it was taken over by the armed forces as a troop transport. And here we've got another ghost ship because it became known as the Gray Ghost, primarily because they painted the ship gray and it was transporting troops during World War II. After the war was over, it once again became a luxury liner. During its heyday, it had all of the best-known celebrities had toured on the Queen Mary. Clark Gable, Greta Garbo, Winston Churchill was on board, and just a whole long list of celebrities that spent time on the Queen Mary. But, it's become a really fascinating location now because it's dry docked in California. You can go and stay on it. It's a hotel, and there are countless ghost stories that come out of the Queen Mary. There are reports of ghosts in the engine room, and the most well-known ghost, I think, is probably Jackie. Jackie is the spirit, purportedly, of a little girl who died in the pool. And Peter James, who some people might recognize that name, was a famous
Peter James.
Psychic and personality, and especially in the 80s. And he was sort of the resident expert there on the Queen Mary when it came to the paranormal, and he used to talk about Jackie a lot and communicate with her and so forth. But what fascinates me about the Queen Mary and this story in particular is that there are no historical records for the death of a little girl in that pool. There's no historical records of Jackie. Now, this sends us into some interesting territory because there are a lot of possibilities here. It could be that there was a little girl named Jackie who died in the pool, and for some reason it was just lost to history. Although I would have a hard time believing that, since the ship is so noticeable and everyone always kept such good records on it. The other possibility is that there could have been some kind of strange cover-up, that it was, maybe not an accidental death or something else associated. So we kind of get into conspiracy territory there. Mm-hmm. I don't particularly buy that theory either, though. It leaves us, however, with the fact that despite there being no historical records of a little girl named Jackie dying in the pool, there are still manifestations. I'm traveling, so I didn't have a chance to dig through stuff, but I actually have an EVP from down in the pool area of what sounds like a little girl answering a question that's directed at Jackie. And, there are countless accounts of people going there and saying that they've captured the voice of this girl. There's some claims that they've seen apparitions or caught apparitions of a little girl named Jackie. So we really have to kind of go down the rabbit hole and consider, is this the spirit of some child named Jackie who came from somewhere else and gravitated towards the Queen Mary because it's such a, sort of vortex of spirit activity? Or is it something else that is merely taking the form of Jackie in order to communicate with people, which means it could be something not so positive? Or then we could be into Tulpa territory. And I know that's something we've discussed before, Norene, but this may be a situation where so many, thousands of people have gone to the Queen Mary looking for Jackie that the collective consciousness has created some kind of energy that is responding when people go there in order to communicate with Jackie.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
I know in the video that I played, I've had the opportunity to visit the Queen Mary. Great ship if you ever get a chance to spend the night there. Now, this is actually this video that she's going to play. It was on the upper decks, and just walking along the upper decks, and I pan my camera around, and there's, of course, somebody down towards the end walking, but you actually can hear another voice on the recorder that doesn't belong to anybody, especially not the person that was filming. So you can play that video.
Okay,
if you like.
I'm going to go ahead and play it. It's only 6 seconds, guys, so listen up.
But we went through them, so
Still there.
What happened to it? God, that was fast. Hold on, let me do it again. Oh, it's not playing now. Wait a minute. Hold on. Let's see if I can play it again. Hold on.
Jackie's screwing with it.
All right. Let's see if I can play it again. No, it won't play it again. All right, it played it just that once, but that was so fast.
That's strange.
In this video clip, you can actually, as it pan around to get a view of the ship, you can actually hear this whisper that says, "Still there."
Okay, let me try one more time. Yeah, no, no, it won't play again. But I hope you guys heard it. It was really fast, and it was only 6 minutes. So I hope 6 seconds. So I hope you heard it. Okay, I don't know if there's. There were 2 more. If you want to talk about them really fast, we've got Block Island, and we've got the USS Turner Joy. And Ross, you had a clip for that Turner Joy.
Well, the Turner Joy is another retired Navy destroyer. It's actually in Bremerton, Washington. And, just like you with the Hornet, my team has had the opportunity to host a lot of events on the Turner Joy. And through Spooked in Seattle, we do public ghost hunts as well. Now, it was commissioned in 1959 and decommissioned in 1982. And it basically was involved in the Vietnam War. Now, the Turner Joy has quite a bit of interesting stories. This is similar to the USS Hornet. People, don't realize that the military life, becomes these men and now women's lives, And so you find that sometimes they return to that or don't know how to let go of that. And so that's why we find that a lot of these military bases and ships can easily be haunted. Now, done quite a few investigations there, but one night I was hosting an overnight on the ship. And I was hosting this with, this was open to the public. So I had these young girls that decided that they wanted to bring a Ouija board. And so they were sitting, in this corner section in the berthing quarters, and they claimed to have made contact with this gentleman. And so me, I kind of walk in on this Ouija board session, and so they're telling me what's going on, and so I'm like, okay, if there is somebody here, could you please give us some sort of sign? Now, nothing happened. Now, the girl who was on the Ouija board, claiming that she was talking to a young sailor, she says, okay, could you please, prove to Ross that you're here with us? Give us some sort of sign. And all of a sudden, we heard what sounded like somebody knocking on these tin lockers. That's the best way I can describe it. And so I was like, whoa, that's interesting. I've never heard that sound before. And I've been on the ship quite a few times, so I get a little more familiar with the normal sounds that the ship will make. So I immediately jump in. I said, okay, could you do that again? Nothing. So I turned to the young lady on the Ouija board, and I said, could you ask him to do that again for me? And so she does. And right when she asked, immediately we heard that same noise again, somebody knocking on those lockers. So that was pretty interesting. Now, we're going to go ahead by, let's say, another 6 months later. And now my team is doing an overnight investigation. And so there's 2 of my members are sleeping in that room, in that birthing quarters. And in the recording that you're going to play, you'll actually hear that knocking that we experienced 6 months earlier.
Okay. Okay. Now this is the EVP one, right?
Not the EVP one. The other video.
The one with the
that was captured with the cell phone.
Okay, I got it. All right. All right. Hold on. Here we go. Here we go. And they did hear the other one loud and clear. All right.
Yeah.
So this one's 50 seconds, guys. Listen. Pay attention and listen to this, guys. Here we go.
Something you're bumping into there. Oh, dude, there's something knocking.
What the hell? That was knocking from nowhere.
Knock again.
Oops. Hold on. Okay. Okay. Okay, I just played it. What about the EVP?
The EVP, this was actually captured when my team was doing another investigation. And they were hearing a whistling noise. And so the investigator says, was that you? You're asking the other investigator if they had made that whistling noise. And they're like, no, that wasn't me. And so we captured 2 very clear Class A EVPs in this recording. When he asked, was that you? There's a clear response, a whisper, that they didn't hear. And then later they ask, I think it was something like, do you know somebody that died on the ship? And there's a response that actually, I believe it's saying, and I hate to tell people what it says, I like you guys to hear it first, but just to keep this short, it says Greenlee. And we're still trying to research if there was somebody with the last name Greenlee, or it could have been a nickname for somebody. But that is what we captured with that EVP.
Okay. Okay, it's 45 seconds long, so it's not very long. It's short, so here we go.
Breathe in through your nose and out your mouth so you're steady breathing. Did you die on this boat? Or did you know someone that died on this boat? You know, shut off the monitor real quick.
Okay, they heard it. All right. Did anybody did you want to finish any of the lighthouses, or is that enough for tonight?
I think what was it? I think the last one was mine, wasn't it?
It was, there was the Black Island Southwest Lighthouse. Is that a good one?
Oh, it's actually a pretty good one.
All right, let me find the...
It'll be a good one to finish on. Block Island Southeast Lighthouse. There's two out there. Rhode Island. Now, this was actually built in 1875, and it was decommissioned in 1990. Now, legend has it that in the early 1900s, a keeper got tired of his nagging wife. And I believe her name was Maggie. And he decided that he was going to murder her. And he did this by shoving her down the staircase. Now, he claimed that this was a suicide. Now, ever since her passing, I'm guessing she was not happy with her murder. Because since that time, she had been known to haunt him and any other men that visit this lighthouse. She does not like men. In fact, guys are known to be woken in the middle of the night by the bed shaking and even levitating off the ground. In fact, one lighthouse keeper was staying there doing his job, and he was awoken in the middle of the night by his bed shaking. He looks up and he realizes his bed is off the ground. He jumps out of his bed, runs out of the lighthouse, and he's in his underwear, all right? And as soon as he runs out of the lighthouse, the front door to the lighthouse slams shut behind him. Now, he realizes he's standing in the wet, in the cold, again, in his underwear. He has to get back in. So he goes to the front door, and to his surprise, the door is locked. Yeah. He had to contact the Coast Guard to come back and let him into the lighthouse. How embarrassing is that in your underwear?
Yeah.
What's interesting as an additional tidbit about that lighthouse is it's on an island that is about, I think, 7,000 acres. And reportedly, the entire island is haunted. And in fact, there are a lot of reports from people being on the island and seeing ghost ships in the water surrounding the island, specifically the ghost of pirate ships coming in to the land. So there are a lot of reports in that little, that strange little island right there.
Wow.
It's a great place, definitely. I'd love to visit it.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us. And David and Ross, thanks once again for coming on the show. And again, everybody, their last published book is Haunted Toys, and we did air a show on this. And their next upcoming book together is Haunted Ships and Lighthouses. And when do you think, hey guys, so when do you think this will be released?
I don't know, give it a few months.
Yeah, probably hoping for late summer on it.
Awesome. And so what else is happening with you guys? Anything? Oh God, I know. I shouldn't have said that. Forget about it. David Weatherly is part of the Society of the Supernatural. He's on the go all the time with Dave Spinks. And Sean, oh God, what's Sean's last name? I forgot. Austin, that's right, Sean Austin. And they're on the go all the time. So, and then Ross also has a paranormal team, and he's on the go as well. And besides writing books as well. So, and everybody, don't forget, they are on Facebook. You can friend them. They have, would you have websites? Weatherly, what's your website?
I have a blog under twocrowsparanormal.blogspot.com. That's the best place to check out events and so forth I have coming up.
And Ross?
You can always track me down through aghost.org, and that's aghost.org. Or if you're in the Seattle area, come check out my ghost tours at spookedinseattle.com.
Yes. And listen, everybody, you'll be seeing more of Ross and David Weatherly. They are awesome. They have so many books out there and topics that I want to cover on the show, and I would love to have them come back. And thank you so much, you guys, for being here tonight. Thank you. I appreciate it. Always love having you on. Thank you so much. But hey, good luck with your new book. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Night.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed the show. It's always a pleasure to have David Wedley and Ross on the show. They bring a lot to the programs. Hope you enjoyed the show. Let's see, who do I have next? My next show will be on May 4th. And I'm going on vacation next week. So May 4th with Phil Siracusa of the Horsefly Chronicles. And he has so much going on in that haunted house of his. And he asked to come back, and he wants to present evidence to on the show and the things that have been going on. And he really would like to share that. And I said, sure. So he will come back, and I think he's going to bring a paranormal team with him to show the latest evidence. And it's been crazy, absolutely crazy at his house. And then on May 18th, Richard Rowland, will be airing a show on the Haunted Hales Barn Dam. He's written a book on that. It's very, very interesting. All right, so hope you all had a happy Easter. I sure did. And let's do some shout outs, okay? Let's do some shout outs. I want to also thank my mods, Royce Hinman and Unique Annie, for modding. Because of them, you guys have a really great chat room. It's because of them you are able to chat with no problems. They don't put up with any of that. Also, please, Royce needs your prayers. He has medical issues, and he needs your positive thoughts and prayers to go toward him, as well as Jimmy Cortez, who, if you could please send him your prayers as well. So let's do some shout outs, okay? Lynn Flygirl, hi on Emmy, Janet Wolf, Elaine Michael, Chippeteri, Astral Virgin, Zoe Small. I know Carl White's out there somewhere. Hi, Carl White. Charles oh God, I'm terrible. Vapes and Fly. Alexandra Violet, Super Tigress 75, Lully Tubi, Snaggletooth 75, Joe Hedrick, Donald McGuire. Hey, some of you are new here. I hope you please subscribe to the channel and come back. Leopard Sita. Right now for a while I'm going to be doing every other Thursday. Oh my God, I got so much to catch up on in my house, and I just can't do it by having a show every week. So right now, temporarily, every other Thursday. Andrew Cox, Diane Hilbert, Shelley Phelps. Anybody else want to? We had a big crowd tonight. Everybody's dropping off now. I guess you're going to go watch your own shows and whatever. I want to thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate it. I appreciate the thumbs up, and I appreciate the subscriber, if you would subscribe as well. Thanks, Lynn. Hugs back to you, too. B3 Airspace, William Fernandez. Oh, William, I haven't seen you for a while. 82, yes, at 2. Anybody else want to shout out? Carl, are you out there? Stephen Curry. Oh, you're welcome, Stephen. Kathy Salento. Oh, hi, Kathy. Kathy also has a radio show, I believe. And I'm sorry, Kathy, are you still doing your radio show, honey? Yvette Sanchez. Annie, my sweet Annie. Anybody else want to shout out? Guys, I hope you have Mary Sandra Amador. Oh yeah, Carl was. I thought he was. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning there. Anybody else want to shout out? Don't forget, May 4th, the next show. Pungy Fun Guy. Every other week. Yep. Right. Hey, yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, guys, but that's the way it has to be for a while. I just have too much, especially with the summer coming, with family barbecues, and I'm so far behind on doing things I want to do to my house because You have no idea what it's like to have a show every Thursday. It's a lot of work, a lot of work. It's a tremendous amount of work, and I finish one show on Thursday. I have Friday off. My husband is home with me 2 days a week. The rest of the week he's on that Hornet, and then and it's just too much. I just too much. So every other Thursday for now. So everybody, I'm going to say goodnight. Group hug. Yeah, the Whistler. No, the Whistler came home here because of my husband. My husband has, and I think my husband was the one that brought that military spirit that was up in our bedroom. But I haven't seen him since. Anyway, group hugged everybody. Thank you so much. I love you all. I appreciate you coming here every week and watching the show. And if you would tell people about my show and share it, I'd really appreciate it. So that's it. I'm going to say goodnight to you guys and love you all. Have a great weekend. It's going to be hot here. Oh, Andrew. Hi, Andrew. What's up? Oh, the goldenrod. Yeah. Okay, everybody, I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you so much. My weekend starts tonight. My husband's waiting for me right now to have dinner, and he's off tomorrow, and I'm so excited. I love it. So, see you all May 4th, okay? Have a great weekend. Love you guys. Thank you.